Hey everyone, Hazz here. Today I'll be showing you the green goblin buff that I've made. As always, this is based on a 565 champion, so just keep that in mind when you're reading his abilities. Specifically with this one because he's got a lot of numbers to him, such as like damage over time. So jumping into his passives here, he's got a really nice passive, which is essentially like a built-in despair mechanic. So it reduces healing by 15% per debuff on the defender, up to 100%. However, if you have the despair mastery active, then the ability instead lowers power gain. So if you're just a starting player, you don't have many champions, you pick up Green Goblin with this buff, then what he's going to be able to do is reduce healing on the defender really easily. Because stun will reduce by 15%, you can get weakness, you can get suppression, incinerate, you can get poison and shock debuffs, and with all those debuffs you're able to cancel out healing really easily within the first couple specials that you throw. However, if you're more of like an endgame player and you already have despair, or you're pretty avid with your mastery setup, then you're able to reduce power gain instead, or as well as healing from despair as well. So you get the best of both worlds. You get reducing healing and power gain as well. So you can shut down all of the healing and all of the power gain effects if you have 7 debuffs, which is it's not that hard to do with Green Goblin, but you kind of got to play pretty aggressively to keep up all 7 of your debuffs constantly to really get the heal and power gain reduction. But these cannot go to negatives. You cannot reverse healing or power gain with these. It's just shutting it off. Just from this ability, you cannot reverse power gain or healing. Moving on, well-timed blocks on parries. He has a 20% chance per unique debuff to regenerate 10% missing health. So if you have 5 unique debuffs on the opponent, I believe he can get just about 5. He can get suppression, incinerate, he can get weakness, he can get poison and shock, and then he can also get stun from parry as well. So that's enough to have this be really reliable on your parries, and it's just 10% missing health. So it's not that much, and it's going to scale more the more health you've lost. So that's quite useful for a little bit of sustainability. Moving on to heavy attacks, the first hit will inflict suppression, which will lower the opponent's combat power rate at 25%. This is great for, again, not just power gain for Green Goblin, but it's also combat power rate as well. So he's going to be a really good power control option if this buff was to go live, which it probably won't because it's just the buff I made. But if this buff was to go live for whatever reason, then he would be a pretty good power control option. And this stacks to 3, so you can get a max of 75% combat power rate reduction, which is really nice, right? You can think of like Punisher 2099, who has 90%, Miss Fantastic has 75%, same as this, so it's kind of like that, which is pretty nice. You just spam heavy attacks and it lasts for 8 seconds. And then the second hit will inflict Incinerate, which deals 4800 damage over 8 seconds. 4800 is not too much, but it's not terrible either, especially because it's on a heavy attack and you can stack it to 4. It's not that bad at all. And we'll talk about how you can refresh this and double it in potency and duration later on for really big damage over time. On special attacks, you pause all personal debuffs. This is including suppression, incinerate, any damaging debuff that you might have. This is all from his base kit. It doesn't include nose because it's personal debuffs. So it's any sort of debuff that you see in his base abilities, they'll all be paused during special attacks, and that means it gives you just some extra time to not have to worry about waiting out the special attack animation, so you can refresh your debuffs or double the potency of debuffs or whatever you might need to do in that matchup. His special 1 is really good for power control. It drains 8% of a bar of power per unique debuff per beam hit. Essentially what this means is per special 1, he's going to drain 32% of a bar of power per unique debuff. So if you have 1 unique debuff, you'll drain pretty much a third of a bar of power. If you have 3 unique debuffs, you will drain almost a full bar of power. And if you have more than 3, then you can remove more than a bar of power. So this is great for power control. You can spam special 1 and just keep them at really low power for a lot of the fight. And also opponents don't gain any power from beam attacks either. So if they're close to a special 3, this ability can help stop them getting to a special 3 with that special 1 that you'll throw. And then in addition to having the power drain as well. So he's going to be a great power control option with special 1. He also has power control on a special 2, which we'll talk about in a minute. But we'll move on to the Pumpkin Bomb now. For the special 1, it'll refresh all debuffs except stun. So it'll pause, it'll refresh suppression, incinerate, any sort of weakness or poison or shock that he'll gain in the future, he's going to be able to refresh all those with his special 1 Pumpkin Bomb. And again, that's great for keeping up damage over time, consistent damage over time, or consistent other forms of debuffs for utility purposes. And it's also going to apply a weakness for 10 seconds, which is a 30% reduction in attack, which is not that bad. It can't stack, however, lasting 10 seconds and being able to refresh it with a special 1 is pretty nice. Now looking at the special 2 here, the first hit will pause all debuffs for 8 seconds. So what this means is after your special 2, it'll be paused for around about 5 to 6 seconds. So that means you're able to kind of be aggressive and keep your debuffs active, and then they'll start to fall off after that 8-second mark. They'll start to kind of resume the duration, in which case you can build to a special 1 and refresh them again. That's kind of your loop, special 1, special 2, to apply debuffs and then refresh them and double their potency, pause them and double their potency, because the special 2 will double potency of all debuffs. So if you think about having 4 incinerates on the opponent, each dealing 4 to 800 damage over 8 seconds, and then doubling that. So that's going to deal quite a lot of damage. This guy's going to have some really nice damage over time. His special damage itself is not going to be very high. It's going to be probably pretty similar to what you see in game right now, which is not that good. But his damage over time is going to be really nice. It's going to be really nice for damage. And then also, this can only impact a debuff once, so you can't keep on doubling the potency. It just happens once per debuff, just to keep it balanced. And then the second hit will inflict Power Burn. This is the power control I was talking about. It drains 30% of a bar of power per unit debuff. So if you remember the special 1, it drains 32% of a bar of power. So this is just like a tiny bit less than that. So at 3 unique debuffs, it'll drain off 90% of a bar of power. So almost a full bar of power if you have 3 unique debuffs. So if you go for power control, even though I recommend special 1, if for some reason you can't access your special 1 or there's some problems with the special 1, you can always throw a special 2 and you'll get that power drain as well. In addition, it's actually a power burn, so it's going to deal some extra damage based on how much you drained off. So if you have a bunch of debuffs, unique debuffs, then you can get a lot of extra damage off that as well, which is nice. The third hit, which is the one that you see with the fire animation, that'll inflict Incinerate, which deals, I believe, 1.5 times the damage of a heavy attack Incinerate, but it has the same duration. And so you can spam special 1, special 2, heavy attack, special 2, and then you just pause all your debuffs and double all the potency of all those debuffs. So that's some really nice damage over time with the Incinerates, with the poison and shock, which we'll talk about in a minute, along with the combat power rate reduction Incinerate from the heavy attacks. So that's really nice. However, this one can't stack. The other ones can, max stack 4, but the ones from the special 2 cannot stack. So again, that's just 7200 is quite a lot, so having double that potency and then being able to stack them as well, that would be pretty insane. But this is still really good. Having double potency on that and then having other damage over time as well is really nice. But the Pumpkin Bomb effect will inflict a poison and a shock debuff, which will each deal 8000 damage over 10 seconds. So that's 16,000 damage over 10 seconds. Plus you can double that potency with another special 2 after that, which will deal 32,000 damage over 10 seconds. And you also pause it as well, so you probably do a bit more than that as well. That's some really nice damage as well, because again, you can refresh it with a special 1, so you can kind of have like a constant stream of damage over time ticking away between Incinerate, shock, poisons, as well as all your combat power rate reductions and power control that you have throughout the fight, in addition to always reducing that healing or power gain effectiveness for champs like Hyperion and Dragon Man and such. Moving on to the special 3, all debuffs gain double duration. So again, it's going to impact a debuff once, but throwing a special 3 will mean that all your debuffs will just gain a flat double duration. So anything that lasts 8 seconds will now last 16 seconds. This is kind of more useful in longer matchups, to where you need to be able to refresh the debuffs to keep the damage up. Usually you don't need to do a special 3 because you usually have enough time to refresh it and then pause the debuffs again and then refresh them again. But this is kind of nice for like passive AI or like matchups that are really, really big where you don't want to lose much of your damage over time at all. So you can throw this, have the extra safety net of which is extra duration just in case, which is nice. And it will also deal 10,000 direct damage per unique debuff. Now I believe he can get up to 6 unique debuffs, so that means he's able to That's at max. That's at maximum with stuns and everything. He can get up to 6 unit debuffs. That means that he's able to fully block out healing and power gain if he has complete max debuffs. If even one falls off, he's not going to be able to get this, so it makes it a bit more balanced, but it's 10,000 damage per unit debuff, so it's going to be 60,000 damage per special 3 if you're fully ramped up with all your debuffs. Looking at the Sig ability now, he's going to gain 20 to 40% increased combat power rate based on Sig level. He does not need this Sig ability, but having an extra combat power rate is kind of nice to access specials faster, just for more rotation. Think of like Hercules, who gains extra combat power rate per feat of strength. It's quite nice to have, but it's not needed to play him. And then also all his Pumpkin Bomb debuffs gets 20% more potency. So that's special 2 and special 1 as well. That's going to be it for today, guys. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great day.